Hello, and welcome to today's session. First off, I want to thank you for taking the time to join. I hope that you and your families are doing well and you're all safe. If you haven't met me yet, my name is John Thomas, or for short, people just call me JT. And I get the pleasure of leading BMC's Digital Service Operations team for product management. And I'd like to welcome you. This is very different than normal. I spent most of my time this year at the beginning of the year out on the road meeting you at your locations. But today I get to welcome you into my house. So here we're in my home office / part-time beside a cycling studio, and on the weekends my wife's yoga space. So you get to see a bit about what's going on with me. And today I'm here to talk about predictive IT and AIOps, and to share some roadmap. Oh, I'm getting a note about no audio from one of the people, Carla. Hopefully we'll be able to get that resolved quickly. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we are, where we see the market heading in terms of the operations, as well as what we're planning to do, some of the things that we're already providing, and then the roadmap for how we're addressing the future needs of operations teams. Now, this is a roadmap session, and so because of this, I just need to inform you that it's accurate to the best of our abilities. We really seek to try to give you an understanding of where we're headed, but as things always are, they are subject to change. Okay, sorry, it looks like the mute's getting solved. Perfect. So actually on the subject of change, really excited about many of the changes that are happening with our roadmap. And in fact, we've gone out and talked to a lot of customers, hopefully a lot of you, and you've seen the direction that we're going and helping to solve the future needs of operations teams. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback about the changes that we've made to our roadmap. And so let me first step in and kind of set up what we see as changing within organizations and what is that effect that is happening on operations teams. We all hear the term about digital transformation, but I think it becomes hard sometimes to really understand what does that actually mean. There's people like Mark Andreessen that said software is eating the world. Satya Nadella, the CEO for Microsoft last year, was saying every company is becoming a software company. When it truly hit home for me is when the bank that I've been using since I was 7 years old sent me a note saying that they were merging with another bank. And that's not strange. Banks merge, that's what they do. They do it to expand coverage. But what was really unique about this particular merger is that both banks said the reason for the merger was because they needed to combine their resources in order to be able to address the digital service needs of their consumers. That's incredible. It's a massive change to think about that. The evolving landscape and the growth is not in particular locations, it's to the consumer through the digital interface. And in order to support this, we see that there's a lot of changes that are likely to occur, and we worked with a lot of analysts to help to do these projections. In the next 5 years, we believe that over 2/3 of companies will be pushing code on a daily basis. Now that's a much faster pace than most applications are read today, and that creates more change for operations to manage. Additionally, 90% of applications we believe will be cloud native applications, just necessary in order to meet the needs of the customers and the dynamic nature of their usage. 80% we believe of the code will be externally sourced through external APIs and microservices, again, creating additional complexity in the landscape. And 1.6 times the number of developers will also be out there developing and pushing code, which is really great from a digital business perspective, but it creates challenges when we look at scaling from an operations perspective. Now, in order to meet these needs, we believe that enterprises need to evolve to become autonomous digital enterprises. And I was thinking about what this means just this weekend when I was in a car riding down the road, and I looked over, and next to me, and I do not recommend doing this, but next to me was a guy in a Tesla, and for the 5 minutes I was riding alongside him, I didn't see him look up once to look at the road. He was deep within emails, let's call it emails. He was looking at his phone. And I was thinking about what this really means to the future of IT operations. I think it means that we have an opportunity to be able to evolve operations where it runs, for the most part, on autopilot. And much like the car that's running, that knows common things that might come up. So if it sees a car swerve into its lane, it knows to proactively to slow down. It can create a bigger gap between the cars. And so it's able to react and respond to the conditions around it that it can't control. Now, if we look at this in terms of IT operations, there's some key focus areas that we believe are requirements on that journey in order to facilitate a really great experience and at the same time reaching that autonomous nature. And those three areas are customer centricity, agility, and actionable insights. Now, we need to translate those because they can mean a lot of different things. So when we translate these into the operations landscape, I think about this as customer centricity is enabling digital services teams to adopt modern application environments. It's about delivering self-service and all doing it to enable them to meet the SLAs required for their services. For agility, the biggest pressure is coming from DevOps models. They need to go faster. They need to be more iterative. They need to introduce more changes, but at the same time, we can't give up the governance that is required. And lastly, we're getting lots and lots of data, and we need lots and lots of data. If you think about the car example, the car is taking millions of points of data every minute to understand what's going on around it. But the key is not to just be able to scale to include all of that observability data, but to also to analyze that data and focus up the specific areas that need action, and to tie those to the ability to automatically respond to that action. Now, I think this is a really exciting direction for IT operations. It's a journey. There's multiple steps in the journey. And in the next section, I'm happy to tell you about some of the things that we've recently delivered to help operations teams to start to take steps forward on that journey. The first area, when we think about being able to analyze the data, provide up actionable insights, and align it to customer centricity, one of the big things that we provided in the most recent release of BMC Helix Operations Management, this is a 2008 release version, is proactive alerting. And the way that we do this is we're looking at the data. So if you think about the challenge that I hear, one of the biggest things that operations teams are always worried about and trying to avoid, it's what I call the customer-driven alert. That is when the systems that are monitoring don't actually identify an issue. The way that they get it is by the customer calling up and saying that the service is really bad. And in order to help to avoid that and to actually get out in front of issues, one of the things that we can do is identify when a service is behaving abnormally. So there's a couple different ways to do this. One is you can look at single metrics. I noticed that the CPU is running very high for this time of day. That's abnormal. That could be an issue. One of the things that's introduced that's new in this release is multivariate anomaly detection. So if you think about as your transactions might go up in your application server, you might also expect those application increase. But if you saw it go the other way, where the transactions increase, but the CPU goes down, that might also be an indication of an abnormality, but it's not a single metric, it's two metrics and how they normally respond to each other. Now, this is great, but if it becomes too noisy, then you can't actually use that data. And in fact, a lot of people route this directly over to the incident management system, and the incident managers come back and say, turn that off, way too noisy. So to help with this, we provided new sensitivity controls where, based off of the service that you're monitoring, you can actually say, I want to be identified when this is very far out of the normal baseline or only slightly out of the baseline. And depending on the criticality of the service, that gives you that flexibility. Now, overall, the goal is to provide that really great customer experience by leveraging all the data and surfacing up those insights. And this can be used today. The next thing that we're seeing is, as organizations evolve, as there's new roles that get created, where lots of this information I'm going to try refreshing my browser. I think we're having connectivity issues. Can you hear me now? Marla, can you hear me now? Oh, I'm getting a lot of notes from the audience saying that yes, they can hear me. So Carla, maybe that's on your side. Well, sorry folks, as we've all kind of learned in this new work from home environment, sometimes things go a little bit unexpected. And so getting back on track here, and thank you all for saying we can hear you. I appreciate it. One of the things that's happening, let me take back control. Sorry for all the technical difficulties here. Let me get back on track. Let's see how we can go now. So as we see the organization changing, there's a lot of different consumers of data. And so one of the things that we need to enable is self-service. So giving the consumers the data they need for their specific role and responsibilities. So let me give you an example. One of the things that we see a lot of is service owners. Now, if you think about the data that a service owner might care about, they might care about the events. Do I have any critical events that are happening in my environment? Are there specific KPIs, metrics that I need to understand? They also might care about, are there critical patches that are missing or vulnerabilities that are necessary? And they don't want to have to go to a lot of different places because that can inhibit their experience and also doesn't help them to go as fast as they need to. So one of the things that we've provided in the BMC Helix dashboards that is released in 2008 is the ability to take data from multiple different areas. So we're starting out with bringing in operations management and some of the remediate data from automation console and cloud security, and allowing users to pick and choose the different widgets that are available out of the box for them to create their own dashboards, and then to construct their own custom dashboards. And this is based off of a very common and one of the most adopted open source solutions. So it's very extensible, and there's a lot of plugins for other tools as well. Now, one of the things that I'm super excited about, because I think it's really transformational, that was released in the 2008 timeframe, is what we call Chatbot for cloud cost optimization. And the reason that I find this really awesome is when we came together as a service management and operations management team, and we brought these two together, there were strengths in each side of the business units that we had. And one of the strengths from the service management side is really having an incredible engagement with consumers. And one of the things that's happening on the operations side is the need to shift left, to put the data in the hands, to remove friction from the app dev and DevOps teams. And so most of you probably know we released BMC Helix Cloud Cost. It's a great tool. It works great for DevOps teams that don't want to go through a request portal in order to get their cloud resources. They want to provision them through a CI/CD tool, but at the same time, they need to make sure that their spending is in line with budget. And so Cloud Cost helps to give them that visibility, helps them to project and make sure they're going to stay within that budget. But this takes it to the next level. This now enables those consumers of cloud services to be able to see their usage, their costs and their projected costs, as well as optimizations and take actions directly in the tools that they use every single day, like Slack or Microsoft Teams, if they're working with WhatsApp. So all of those channels of integration, but being able to see the data that they need to do their jobs and to do it successfully. Really awesome. It's a change in the way that you think about a lot of the traditional IT being the control of access to now being the consultant and helping to facilitate really frictionless acceleration of the business teams. Another area that is really important that we've enhanced the solution in the 28 release is around helping teams to adopt cloud and DevOps models when it comes to ensuring that patching, compliance, and governance. And so there's a couple of challenges that exist within organizations. One is they have DevOps teams going out and provisioning through CI/CD pipelines directly into the public cloud. And those resources, nobody knows. Were they sufficiently patched? Did anybody harden them? We don't know. Do they have an agent? No, they don't. And so one of the things that we've done is we've added in the past couple releases the ability through cloud security to identify servers that exist in AWS and Azure that don't have a server automation agent on those services. So we have no visibility into whether or not they're patched. And then to also to deploy that agent automatically to those instances. Now, once you deploy the agent, that's great if they have a public IP and you can access them from your two-site server automation server. But we found that a lot of customers said, we don't actually have direct connectivity. We've got these servers running in a virtual private cloud. They have they can't be accessed from with a public IP address. So we need a way to broker the communication from your on-premise two-site automation for servers and your cloud servers running in AWS and Azure. And so that's why we created a tool called Smart Hub to broker that communication between the two. Now, all of that's great, but what about those DevOps teams that are provisioning new resources on a very frequent basis? How do we keep up with those resources? Well, what we've done is we've updated our agent to what we call the Smart Agent. And the Smart Agent, if it's embedded within your VM images, when it gets provisioned, it'll automatically phone home to register in server automation. Now, what that gives you the ability to do is you can automatically enroll that server, and you can set it up to do automated schedules for things like compliance and patching. So that really helps the operations system. As those resources are spinning up frequently to facilitate DevOps, they're also ensuring that they're patched, compliant, and you've got visibility into that. Now, those were all things that we have already released. Very exciting innovations that you can consume today. But where I want to take you next is to talk about where we're going in the future and to get a preview into the innovation, and it truly is a lot of innovation that's coming out. The first thing is, how are we building it? And this is a very big change, and it's a really great impact on you as our customers in the extent of the use cases that you're going to be able to perform, as well as the ease of use of administering the solution. And that is that we're building a single unified platform for engagement, observability, and actionability. Well, you might say that's a lot of really big words, a lot of buzzword bingo going on here. Tell me, what does this actually mean to me? Well, let's talk about what are some of the challenges that exist. As we start to look at DevOps teams revving resources frequently, along with cloud-native resources that are very ephemeral in nature, meaning they're short-lived, it becomes a very difficult challenge to stay in sync about what's going on in the topology. You might have run into this yourself. One tool might be aware of a change that's occurred because maybe it's a monitoring tool and it's already picked up the change, but your service model hasn't been updated. And so the correlation between that service model and the resource hasn't happened yet. So what are we doing to solve that? Well, instead of trying to do data synchronization between multiple tools and to try to keep that aligned, we said, let's take a modern approach. Let's create one dynamic service management solution, and let's have that be an integral piece of every one of our applications. It is the common piece. It is tied in directly to operations management, to capacity, to ITSM, to discovery, so that as information about resources comes in, it's automatically and dynamically made available to all of the other sources. And we did this in a very open way because we realized that all of the tools, many of the tools within our environments have different bits and pieces of information that help us to paint the bigger picture. And in order to do that, we have to make it very easy to bring in that third-party data about the topology. Now, what are some of the things that we can do that we weren't able to do in the past? You know, one of the things about the ease of use for customers, you think about it, if you're monitoring a resource, you're pulling in metrics. You're pulling in metrics from that resource on a regular basis. Well, if you want to start doing capacity management and optimization, you say, well, what's the data that you need? Well, I need a lot of time series metric data. Well, because we're using a single platform with a single time series persistence layer, we'll be able to take that data in through monitoring, turn on capacity optimization, and start to summarize that data and use it for optimization use cases, greatly reducing the effort for manageability. And the same examples are available over and over and over again. And I'm going to get into some of the other examples as we dive deeper into some of the specific use cases that we're making available in the roadmap. So the first area is event noise reduction. So one of the common challenges that we hear from the customers is, as you're having more changes, as your environments are becoming more dynamic, that you're ending up with event fatigue. You're not looking at a screen, your teams are looking at various screens and alerts, and you're getting a lot of volume. But it's really hard to truly tell when something has gone wrong, because when it goes wrong, the entire thing lights up. So if you think about an example of a storage array that's supporting a VMware environment, and that VMware environment is running thousands of virtual machines, if you have an issue on that storage array, you're not getting one alert that says, hey, this is a problem with your storage array. You're getting thousands of alerts from all of the impacted resources. Now, that all of those alerts are true because all of those resources are impacted, but it's not the easiest way to understand what's going on in your environment. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're using analytics-based correlation to look at things like the time that a particular event came in, the text of the event, the resources, the service that it's a part of, to try to automatically correlate those events together into a much smaller number of situations. Now, the goal here is so that the NOC can see what's going on. So they see that I've got a problem with my Boston VMware environment. They don't see that I have 2,000 events one from each of my virtual machines, plus a bunch from my VMware infrastructure layer, plus the storage array, we see that there is an issue with my VMware service. And so this helps the NOC to be more efficient, so you don't have to continue to throw people at the NOC team to be monitoring, to be able to keep up with all of that volume of events. And it helps you to get better visibility so you're not missing the critical things that are coming in these larger event storms. Now, I talked earlier about the dynamic service management, about being able to bring together the service models and the topology and use it in multiple sources. And that's what we're doing here. So we're integrating this as an embedded component in all of our applications with a shared data store so that you can start to visualize what is the topology directly in the use case that you need it for. And to be able to overlay on top of that topology some of your service data, some of your operations data, in order to help you to be able to truly understand and have that intelligence, that 360-degree view of what's happening within your environment. Another really important use case that we're enabling is probable cause analysis. So if you think about what it looks like when a user identifies that there's an application performance issue. So one of the common workflows that we see is that the application team gets a ticket to investigate why the performance is not happening at the speed that they expect it to be. And they might look at that and they might say, it looks like the slowness is occurring around the database queries. And so they might then open a ticket for a database team to investigate. And that database team might investigate and they might see that, oh, actually, there's a lot of packets being dropped. That looks like an issue for the networking team. And so they open a ticket for the networking team, and the networking team tries to figure out what's going on, and they notice, oh, we recently pushed an iOS update to one of our Cisco devices. Maybe that's the cause of the packets being dropped. So if you think about that, sounds very quickly when I explain it to you, but in an organization with multiple silos and different queues of things going on in each of those silos, that might mean that an issue that's impacting users and customers takes a really long time to get resolved. It's got to pass through multiple hands. But what if we were able to do that kind of analysis on behalf of the operations team and get all the way down to identifying that it was a network change that recently occurred that's the most likely probable cause? Well, that's exactly what we're doing with our probable cause analysis. So you can see in this screen a couple of really important things. Number one, on the left side, you can see that we're going to score and rank what are the most likely probable causes. So when you have a team and you think about maybe it's an issue that's coming up and the NOC's looking at it and they're trying to figure out where to route this, or potentially it's you've already created a war room, you're trying to solve this, it's one of your most critical applications, where do you start? So that'll be a great indicator of where we think you should start. The other thing you'll notice is there's a topology on your right. And so this gives you visibility into the layers of nodes. So one of the things that we evaluate in our algorithms is what is the deepest node? Because if you have a storage array that supports a whole lot of ESX infrastructure with a bunch of virtual machines and they all are sending alerts, it's a good possibility that it's the deepest node, which would be the storage. Now, that's one thing, but what's one of the first things that we look for when we try to figure out what went wrong that wasn't going wrong before? Well, we look at changes. So that's another aspect here, is being able to see not just service, not just operations data like events and anomalous metrics, but to also see changes and incidents overlaid on top of the same topology. And another big factor is time. The issue that happened first, ultimately, a lot of times, is an indicator of what most likely is the probable cause. So you can also see a little window that shows you a timeline view of what was the first thing, the first indicator to occur. And in addition to that, being able to play back what did the topology look like as the time was progressing. This gives you some more insight into what most likely is the root cause. And because you bring all of this information together into a single place, it can drastically reduce the amount of time that it takes for you to go from a ticket for an application team down to actually identifying that it was network and getting to that root cause of identifying that it was the changed iOS and be able to take an action to do something about it. Another big thing that we see is when I go out and talk to customers, they say, we have a lot of adoption of containers. And for many, it's early stages. They're using it in some early applications, but they haven't really gone to production with those applications. But as they do, they recognize that they're lacking a lot of the information necessary to ensure that the environment have enough resources, that those resources are allocated correctly to ensure that they can meet the SLAs, and at the same time make sure that they're not wasting resources with really inefficient allocation. And so in order to help people that are in this scenario, we're providing what we call predictive IT for our capacity optimization. And this predictive IT is going to help to identify a lot of really important things. The first is it's going to look at your nodes, your clusters, and your namespaces in your Kubernetes environment, and it's going to identify if there's any allocations, things that have been where you've over-allocated the number of resources to what's actually physically there. Because if all of those pods call in to ask for the resources, you're potentially going to fall into an issue with contention and issues with the services that are run. Very common problem as customers start to scale out their applications running in Kubernetes. And sometimes one of the things that they identify is they have a lot of unbounded pods. So pods where they haven't specifically specified the allocation. And once we make sure that we have our risk in check, the next thing is, are we doing it efficiently? Do we have a bunch of pods where we've asked for allocations, but we've never actually seen any indication that the usage is close to what we've allocated? And so being able to identify those optimization opportunities is a great way to improve efficiency of that environment. And so we'll be able to pull back and say, these pods could potentially be resized to save on capacity. Now that's great from an infrastructure team perspective. So if you're the team that's running the Kubernetes environment, it's nice to have that information and be able to send it in a report over to the application teams that have those pods. But one of the things that we're looking at that's even better is providing those recommendations via APIs that application and DevOps teams can consume real time. So they can, as they deploy a new image and replace the pods that are there, they can take those recommendations and automatically incorporate them into the new pod size. Now, those two things are great. So we can help reduce the risk in the steady state environment. We can help to optimize the usage in a steady state environment, but sometimes there are business needs that we know are coming. We know that, during around this time of year, depending on your company, you probably have different applications for HR that get used more heavily than they do most of the times of the year. And so people are coming in for their benefits. You're going to get a higher volume, and that's not really just natural organic growth. That is very time-based growth. And so it's important also to enable business analysts to be able to say, I believe that my environment is going to need to scale by a business metric to be able to correlate that and model it down to the infrastructure level so you can see, do you have sufficient capacity in order to support this? So this is how to get out in front of a business change that you're expecting and still ensuring that you have sufficient capacity to run a performance service in these Kubernetes environments. And the last thing is there's a change in who is actually able to set some of these things. The size of the pods is being dictated by a lot of times the app dev teams or the DevOps teams. And because of this, it's important to then show them back so they can be responsible for the usage that they have. And so being able to create collaborative team views for the containerized environments, showing people their efficiency, and being able to use RBAC to isolate it to specifically the set of resources that they should be able to see is another important thing that we're providing. Now, we talk a lot about using data, being able to get to actionable analytics, actionable insights, but what's the next step? The next step is taking action. And so one of the things that's coming is a component that we call intelligent automation. And we believe that this is a component that will be able to tie into a lot of the different insights that are going to come out and allow you to take action on those insights. So one way to take action would be to use a policy. So for instance, you might have a specific type of well-known event. And perhaps it's something like you're running out of disk space. And there's a well-known automation that you want to run every time that you get a disk space full error or a disk space filling error alert. And that is that you want to go delete everything that's in the temp space. So if we think about that sort of Tesla analogy, if a car is going to merge over in front of you, it's a very common scenario. What should we do? We should back up. We should back up a little bit, give it some more room. Same thing here with intelligent automation, be able to tie the action to that particular well-known event. Now, being able to implement that event might be something through a BMC tool with our automation tools, but we also want to support other third-party automation tools as well. So being able to call into Terraform or Ansible. We know that there's a plethora of automation tools, and the biggest thing we want to do is help connect those to the times when we need the automation. And so in addition to the automated mapping of a policy event to action, we also know that a lot of times operators want to trigger the automation. And when they do this, we want to have feedback. So we want to give them a recommendation based off of the context of their situation. Here's an automation that we believe is going to be helpful for you. So go and run this automation. And then to get feedback on whether or not that automation was successful and whether or not they were able to find the automation to really create that continuous innovation flow around automation. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is really improve the reaction time as well as making employees more efficient through automation. Now, the last thing that's coming is another big area. As we start to go fast and as the environments become more complex, it's important that we don't miss things to make sure that those environments are safe. And so we're expanding the automation console that you know about today to bring in compliance, patching, and vulnerability. And we're looking at it across the multiple vectors of servers, networks, and then public cloud resources, all within that single pane of glass, so that you improve your ability to identify risk, and you do it in a way that you don't have to go to a lot of different sources in order to get that information. So we think that that's going to be another big help into enabling the autonomous digital enterprise. Now, with that, I apologize that I did run out of time to answer questions. Sorry for the technical difficulties today. I think we all have gone through plenty of these in various events. I will be on chat, so if you find me in the Exchange app, please feel free to reach out and to ask the questions that you have about the roadmap, or if that's not something that works for you, get in touch with your account managers. Me and my team would be very happy to meet with you to discuss these things. We're very excited about them. We hope you're excited about them too. And I thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a great rest of your conference. Thanks a lot.